University of Lagos. On behalf of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Folashade Ogushola, FAS OON, we welcome you. The Director of the Center, Professor Bola Obo, I saw a warm welcome to everybody. The Pioneer Director, our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Luatoyin Gudipe, I warmly welcome you. My name is Aderoke Samuel, and I welcome you to this webinar. And I have a feeling that by the end of this webinar, we will get a better understanding and we would have even a fuller knowledge of biodiversity, conservation, and its management. And I'm glad to say this morning, we already have in the house the keynote speaker, the discussants, and those that will take the case study sessions. So it's going to be a full day for every one of us. Please begin to get your questions down so that at the time for question and answers, we can all rub minds together. Once again, good morning, welcome. It's a pleasure to have everyone here on this wet, beautiful morning. I want to call for Professor Khalid Adekoya for his welcome address. Professor Adekoya, good morning, sir. Kindly welcome us to this beautiful webinar. Hello, Professor Khalid. Professor Khalid, sir. Professor Khalid, good morning. We cannot hear you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. You're already on and you're online already, so we can see you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for welcoming me. I was trying to log on, but the host was not giving me the right. But now that he has given me, I thank you very much for this. Yes, we are all welcome to the International Day of Biodiversity 2024. Today, May 22, 2024. It is gratifying that we are all alive today to witness this day. And it is also noted that this is a reminder of the critical importance of biodiversity in sustaining our life on Earth. We also recall that the human activities in all aspects of our life, on land, in water, in the rural areas, in also the urban areas, lay credence to this fact that our activities tend to either pollute the earth or also do some things that is inimical to our sustenance. And it is important to always remind ourselves that if we don't manage our lives properly and live with what will be sustainable, we are likely to shorten the life of the flora and the fauna that is on Earth. And this will be inimical to our sustenance. And this is why the center is always on the forefront to make sure that we continue reminding ourselves and bringing to fore the necessary things to be done in order for us to be able to have sustainability in our livelihood. To this end, the center has brought in technocrats who have understood this aspect very well. And they will be able to give it out to us. So we are also happy that our students in our center for master's programs and a lot of people are still joining us, both locally and internationally, will benefit from this. And we take it off from here. The anchor person, my sister, has already told us that we need to listen very well. We need to also be able to contribute at the end of the day. We have a 2-hour engagement, which, to my knowledge, will benefit each and every one of us, no matter our area of study and our area of concern. So I'll implore us to listen attentively, contribute our quota, and whatever we're able to gain from this, we practicalize it in every niche that we find ourselves. I wish you all a nice time on this program, and we'll all be here till the end for us to be able to rub minds and chart a course, as it is part of the plan, where we must be part of the plan to sustain our life. Thank you very much for listening. Back to you, my sister, Professor Aderunke.
Thank you very much, Professor Khalida Adekoya, a very strong member of the TETFUND Center of Excellence in Biodiversity Conservation and Ecosystem Management. Thank you for welcoming us all. But to give us a brief overview of the significance of today, the World Biodiversity Day, I have the pleasure to call on Dr. Fatima Olaleru. She will be representing the Deputy Director of the Center to give us the brief overview. Dr. Olaleru, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Samuel, our moderator. Can you all hear me, please?
Yes.
We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone that is connected to this call. Thank you very much for joining. We at the TETFUND Center for Biodiversity Conservation and Ecosystem Management is joining the global village to celebrate this year's
We cannot hear you again.
Where we would apologize. I'm sure she has some issues with our network, but I'm sure Dr. Olaleru will soon join us. Dr. Olaleru, are you still with us? Are you back now?
Sorry, there was an interruption. The network seems to be fluctuating. I'm very sorry. So I was saying that we are joining the global community to celebrate this year's International Day for Biodiversity. Down memory lane, the International Day for Biodiversity has been celebrated on the 29th of December. And that was the time that the International
We've had such a heavy downpour in Lagos overnight. I am sure it's also contributed to Dr. Olaleru's network glitches, but I'm sure she will soon be back with us. Once again, let me warmly welcome us to this webinar to mark the International Day for Biodiversity 2024. Dr. Olaleru, are you now back with us? Dr. Olaleru, are you with us? Are you back now? We can hear you perfectly now.
All right. Sorry. The International Day for Biodiversity Conservation has been celebrated on the 29th of December of every year since 1992, when the international community decided to bring to fore the Convention for Biological Diversity, the CBD. But sometimes on December 20th of 2000, the General Assembly of the United Nations decided to change the date to May 22nd. This May 22nd happened to be the day the text, the adopted text or the agreed text of the CBD was taken into action in Nairobi. So at that Nairobi event, the United Nations General Assembly agreed that based on the several holidays in the late December, when 29th was adopted for the celebration, the event can be moved to this 22nd. So since 2000, the International Day for Biodiversity has been celebrated every 22nd of May. Now, in the University of Lagos, the Center for Biological Diversity and Conservation Management joined the global community last year actively to celebrate it. But may I tell you that before then, we've been doing some other events, which some of my colleagues will share later. This year's event is having the team be part of the plan. Be part of the plan. Why should you be part of the plan? Why should I be part of the plan? That is because biodiversity, as it were, is our lifelong sustaining system. Without biodiversity, man cannot really exist because we depend on it for all our supplies. Biodiversity is our mainstay. So that was even what was the background to the creation of the convention. So you and I cannot sit idle and expect things to go normal when biodiversity is being lost. So there is a call for stakeholders to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity, which has been on a very fast lane. A lot of biodiversity are even going into extinction. So it's part of our plan to support it so that we will stem the tide of this loss. So the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has decided that stakeholders be involved. And when we say stakeholders, it means not just only government, it means indigenous people, it means local communities, it means non-governmental organizations, and it means lawmakers, it means businesses, and of course, it means academic institutions, because we at the academic front have a great role to play in terms of even making our new generation to know the values of biodiversity. So we are encouraged to become stakeholders and to become active participants in many ways by supporting the implementation of the plan. You have a role, I have a role, and the role is to help us to make sure that biodiversity decline is reversed. That means that all our goals of the Millennium Development Goal, which has been replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals, can be achieved even through biodiversity conservation. And then in the center here, we've been doing a lot. It's part of our being the plan that we are collaborating with other stakeholders. We'll be involved in many collaborations and we will continue to collaborate. So come 21st October to November of this year, the Colombia CBD COP16 will take place. And it is believed that by that time, at least we would have made some appreciable moves to stem the tide of biodiversity decline. So welcome once again to the event of today. And we believe that through our contribution as part of the global community at our level here, we will add our voice, we will add our action to the reversal of biodiversity loss. Thank you and welcome to the event.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olaleru, for representing the Deputy Director of the Center and for giving us the brief overview of the significance of World Biodiversity Day. At this point, let me warmly welcome the Pioneer Director of the Center, Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe, FAS, former Vice Chancellor, University of Lagos. Prof, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you today?
And we will be happy to have you say a word to us on this International Day for Biodiversity 2024. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Ronke Samuel. I want to say good morning to all my colleagues, our students, the affiliate organization representatives, the conservationists, and our guests. We are gathered today, being the International Day for Biological Diversity, to celebrate the diversity life on Earth and to reaffirm our commitment to its preservation as well as protection for generations to come. Biodiversity provides essentials for the existence of life which sustain our ecosystem. This includes air, water, food, and resilience against climate change. We are faced with unprecedented rate of species extinction now, fragmentation and loss of habitat, and environmental degradation. This we see everywhere now, which is glaring at our faces. And you know that it poses a big threat to living in this world. The theme for this year's celebration is be part of the plan. A day such as this, that is the International Day for Biological Diversity, reminds us of the current status of our world and the urgent need to wake up, the responsibility, and to be actively involved in the plan concerning the destruction of our environment. Africa's biodiversity is declining at an alarming rate in recent years, but with our collaboration and our collaborative efforts, we can make a huge difference. Here at the TETFUND Center of Excellence in Biodiversity Conservation and Ecosystem Management, we not only promote and coordinate biodiversity research, we are also dedicated to providing scientific foundation for the conservation, education, and sustainable use of biodiversity within Nigeria, Africa, and the world around us. We work with local communities and collaborate with government agencies and international organizations in order to develop innovative and sustainable solutions to biodiversity challenges. This is a clarion call to every one of us to embark on this journey and become a part of the plan to create a sustainable future where biodiversity thrives. No action is insignificant, as together we can make a difference. It is an honor as the Foundation Director of TCEBCEM to welcome you all to this webinar titled Halting Biological Degradation in Africa, Imperative for Social Movement. Thank you all, and happy Biodiversity Day. God bless us all. Thank you. Over to you, man.
Thank you very much, Prof. We really appreciate the word of encouragement and the charge to action that you have given us this morning. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now to the real reason why we're here. And like I said, the keynote speaker has been here. I'm glad to say that Professor Wale Fatumbi, who is the Acting Director of Research and Innovation, Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA, in Ghana, is already here with us. And so we're glad to have him. He will be speaking on the title, Halting Biodiversity Degradation in Africa, Imperative for a Social Movement. And to read his citation this morning, I have the pleasure to say that Dr. Bolaniwa Subar will be reading the citation of our keynote speaker. Dr. Subar is one of the research fellows of the center. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Professor Fatumbi. Professor Oluwale Abiodun Fatumbi is the Acting Director of Research and Innovation at the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA. He holds a doctorate in farming systems agronomy, soil fertility from the prestigious University of Ibadan. here in Nigeria. He leads the strategic development and implementation of various research and development initiatives in Africa, and as well, the Sub-Saharan Africa Challenge Program, SSACP. This is credited with the development and proof of the innovative platform as a veritable instrument for achieving quick impact from research outcomes. Before joining FARA, Professor Wale worked at the Agricultural and Rural Development Research Institute, ARDRI, University of Fort Hare, South Africa, as a researcher and lecturer. He worked at the Total Development International Foundation, TODE, as a program manager. He worked at the Arati Environmental Limited as a soil fertility management expert, at the Savannah Sugar Company Limited, Adamawa, as a field agronomist, and at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, utilizing broad skills in agricultural research and development. He holds leadership positions in steering communities of some continental initiatives, where he contributes to developing strategic pathways and policy issues. He is a part of the UN high-level panel of experts on agroecology and other initiatives. That's the HLPE14. He is also vast in facilitating international partnerships for Africa's agricultural research and development. All these are coupled with his progressive university teaching and graduate mentorship work. Professor Fatumbi has facilitated many training sessions on agricultural related subjects and has mentored well over 16 postgraduate scholars at MSc, MPhil, PhD levels, and postdoctoral levels. He is an adjunct professor of agricultural innovation systems at the University of Fort Hare, and more lately with Northwest University, Mafeking, South Africa. Professor Wale Fatumbi is well lettered with over 120 referred publications to his credit. Kindly welcome to the platform today's keynote speaker, Professor Oluwole Abiodun Fatumbi, as he delivers his address titled Halting Biological Degradation in Africa, Imperative for Social Movement.
Thank you very much. And I want to build on the existing protocol laid already, but my strong appreciation also goes to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, also the former Vice Chancellor that is with us on this platform, Professor Ogundipe, Dr. Mobolanle Adimula, represented by Dr. Laleru, and others that are here with us today. My joy knows no bound that University of Lagos in Nigeria is taking the lead on the issue of biodiversity and its conservation. And I must confess that this is something that is far important, very important, and all of us need to give good cognizance to it. I work for FARA, the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, and FARA is the apex body that is coordinating agricultural research at the continental level. It is the technical arm of the African Union Commission by agreement to coordinate agricultural research, innovation on the continent. So FARA is the weaver of partnership. FARA incubates initiative, set foresight and set the direction that the continent should go as it relates to its agricultural research and development. I mean, within the framework of the work of FARA, biodiversity plays a major role. In fact, as it relates to our life, as it relates to our agriculture, industrial development, I mean, it is very important. If you give your mind a bit to the Sustainable Development Goal, you will realize that 17 out of the goals speaks to the issue of biodiversity in one way or the other, but specifically SDG 14 and SDG 15 speak strongly to it. Now, the trouble is, as much as we give a bit of attention to biodiversity, the pace of biodiversity degradation continue to increase at the global level, but more importantly, in Africa. And Nigeria is also a big part of this negative statistics. Like other speakers have said, attention to biodiversity has been there for about 3 to 4 decades. And then 3 decades ago, the Convention on Biological Diversity came up with a treaty, an agreement. I took my time to look at the agreement again yesterday, and the number of African countries that are part of this agreement, I realized that as at 1992, when this convention held, and 1994, when the agreement came into force, 53 countries in Africa are part of it. Now we have 55 countries on the continent, new one, but 53 were part of it, including our beloved country, Nigeria. So every year since then, like the speaker said, 22nd of May is dedicated to reenacting our joint agreement on conserving biodiversity. And that is why the UN set this day apart, that we should celebrate biodiversity and take a stock of what we're doing. I mean, think through and do the right thing. When I look at the document, the convention document itself, 3 big things comes to the surface. The need for conservation of biodiversity. Then sustainable use of the biodiverse resources that we have, and fair and equitable sharing of the benefits that we arrive from the use of genetic resources on the continent. I mean, into relative detail, you know, the convention document or the treaty contains 42 articles, and 17 out of these 42 speaks to practical action that should be taken. I will not go through it, but this is what is projected on my screen now. One of it is the need to develop national measures for conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. And I'm very happy that Nigeria had about 2 documents, treaties on this. Well, having the document is not as important as implementing it and getting this to move on. Please, can someone confirm if you can see?
Professor Fakubi, your slide is not moving at all. It's just on the first slide, sir.
It's still on the first slide. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay, that's noted, and I'm going to move, quickly correct that now.
All right, then, sir.
A moment, please, for my team to quickly help with that. Is it moving now?
Slideshow, sir.
Yeah, it's on the third one now. So, but
Okay,
you need to
just go back and tell me this.
No, put it in it.
Put it in the second.
It's on the 3rd slide now.
Slideshow.
Yeah, that would be better. Put it on slideshow.
Yes, it's on slideshow.
So you know.
And presenters.
Click on it, sir.
Okay, just a moment. My team is also
working on it. All right.
Okay. So tell me, have I gone back to the Farah slide now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then I move to the next one.
Yes, it's working now.
Okay, things are working now. Thank you very much. Sometimes you need this very skillful young fellow to take us from the internet issue. So, like I said, there are these 14 points that you find in the treaty itself that speaks to practical action that should be taken at the country level. And I started talking about that every country that signed the treaty is expected to come up with measures that will lead to the conservation of biodiversity and sustainable use. The issue of in situ conservation, incentives and measures should be put in place at the country level to ensure that the civil society itself do this. Then the issues of investment in research and training, public education, facilitating also access to genetic resources, the issues of exchange of information, then technical and scientific cooperation, and handling of biotechnology and distribution of benefit. And the last one is the issue of financial resources. Just like I said, signing the treaty is not as important as implementing this practical action in such a way that we'll be able to measure the intermediate development outcomes and impact in the short to the long run. And so Nigeria also is part of that. And I'm happy that Nigeria did this bit, but there is still so much more to do. I do not want to preempt the participants in this audience as experts in biodiversity. I know there are quite a number of experts, but for others, it will be useful for us to quickly give a definition of biodiversity and biological diversity itself. And the definition I put in here said it means the variability among living organisms from all sources, including the terrestrial, the marine, other aquatic ecosystems, but it also includes the ecological complexes where these organisms live and thrive. So it covers the issue of diversity among species and between species, and the different ecosystem that ensures that they live and they contribute meaningfully. Now, let me say that our world is a system, and there are different subsystems that contribute to the overall system. A system is the combination of different elements that must function together to give a specific output. And so when you see our world as a system, our existence as human beings is a sub-system of the bigger system. And we depend on one another in a delicate fashion. Now, what I've observed over years is that a modification in one of the components of a system will trigger a change in every other component. And so when you look at human beings and the microbes, the fishes, maybe the wildlife and all these things, they are elements within the system. If there is a modification in the mode of operation, or there is a dismissal or displacement of one, it will trigger a change in all the systems. And if I'm permitted to use economics word, you will have new equilibrium. And the new equilibrium will come up with changes. It could be positive and negative. And that is why the issue of biodiversity begins to play an important role, so that we do not have trade-offs that we will not be able to manage at the end of the day. Let me pick on a few data. In fact, for the purpose of this 20 to 30 minute presentation, I'll be presenting along a number of popular data. And this is the available data on biodiversity loss in Africa. You know, the wildlife population, has declined by 69% in the last 50 years. And when I look at that, it's not a very good statistics to see. Yeah, because when we use the word decline, it has gone down. And those that are out, you hardly can recover them. 1,400 dead species are also lost due to human activities. That's a substantial reduction. You know, 147,500 plant species are already on the red list, and more than 41,000 are threatened with extinction. You know, 20% of freshwater fishes of the world already exist, and a few others are in serious decline due to human activity. And there is this substantial loss in soil microbial diversity. That's my area of core interest, soil microbial diversity. And then it's there, but we cannot have strong statistics because of the dynamic nature of soil microbe. But evidence shows that this is also going down due to agricultural activities and all other human activity. Let's come down home and look at Nigeria. And look at the Nigerian statistics. Nigeria have 864 species of birds, 117 amphibians, 203 reptiles, 775 species of fishes, 285 mammals, and 4,715 plant species. I mean, these plant species, they contribute significantly to our food, our genetic pool for improving the different food and fiber commodity that we have. But you know, Nigeria has been on the red flag list since 2019 because Nigeria hits a threshold that amazes everybody across the globe. Nigeria now have a total of 309 threatened species, and efforts to actually reduce this is really small. In fact, it's very minimal, except lip services to it. So when you look at 309 threatened species, things are going in the wrong direction, and that gives that gives a huge support to the type of thing we're doing here today, and it's also propelling us to think on how to amplify this and take practical action within the civil society in the country. Now, let's look at what are the intrinsic value of biological diversity, because this is the question the common man will ask us. I mean, what do I get from it? He's not careful, and so he slashes. I mean, he opens any land and use it anyhow. It will surprise you how much people go into the forest region in Nigeria and as well in other African countries to cut timbers, I mean, convert it into charcoal and export that to Europe. Why they do that, they trample on so many species, and then, I mean, many of them just die off within the thing. I use this slide to show that there are generic benefits, ecological genetic sources, there are social benefits, there are economic benefits, there are scientific, cultural, and recreational benefits. But when we look at the environmental benefit, and I'll give a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes to this, we get a lot of ecological services from biodiversity. In fact, all ecological services we get is from this. And one of the major ones is the attenuation of toxic substances. Scientific colleague here we support this, my point here. You know, the microbes in the soil is the source they carry the capacity to do this breakdown of substances. And many toxic substances got poured into the soil. Then the attenuation takes place when the microbes ingest them and they break them down. In my former life, working on petroleum bioremediation in Nigeria, I mean, we use microbes to do this. That was when I worked with Arati Environmental Unit. We use microbes to do the attenuation. of the heavy metals and toxic substances that comes from petroleum pollution in the eastern part of the country. Then there is this regulation of species overpass, and the combination of the work of the different elements of biodiversity is very important in this. Then the issue of balance between elements of nature, then the issue of climate change, cycling of environment, atmospheric gases. I mean, the nitrates, the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, and other cycles that you find in the environment. Then the issue of waste management and genetic resources. These are environmental support that we get. Now, when you look at these 6, which is not these 8 issues, which is not exhaustive, if any of them is missing because we do not have the complement of either microbes, either animals, either the right plants to work on all this, you will discover that our life on Earth will be affected. In fact, many elements of nature or of life will also not be able to function properly. I love this slide very much, the economics of biodiversity use and loss. Now, I want you to give me I want your rapt attention as I take time to explain what I mean here. You know, when you look at the side with so much of yellow and the side with so much of green, I began to talk about use. And the other side, I began to talk about non-use. Not because non-use suggests that you are not directly using it, but it exists there and is providing certain services. So look at the direct use from biodiversity: food, fuel wood, the biomass that is generated, and other externalities. Then look down, there are these functional advantage, protection of the different functions of the element of nature, the ecological functions, that is nutrient cycling, you know, what do you call it now? The relationship between organisms, then hydrological function and climatic function. And the value option, that is the potential for future use, the use in conservation and sustaining the environment, then the diversity in terms of production and utilization, then habitat conservation and the issues of landscape. So you see, I put tangibility here, or I reckon with tangibility here because they are tangible. You can touch them, use them, and flow them. So for the non-use, it does not appear to be very relevant, but when it is missing, then there's going to be a disbalance in the architecture of nature. So there is this inheritance value, you know, we call it conservation for future generations. And I will see that it refers to habitat and ecosystem. I mean, if it is not there, you have certain irreversible changes, and the landscape itself is going to change. Then there is this existent value. That is the value that is placed on the non-use. You know, the habitats and ecosystem also, endangered species, and all those things. Now, when we attach financial value to these particular graphics, we will be talking about trillions. The available statistics, the statistics that's available to me about the value, the current use value of biodiversity in Nigeria is talking about $4 trillion US. That is the value of elements of biodiversity. Imagine one nation, I mean, losing that from abuse of biodiversity. You know that we are actually losing a lot. That is separate from the value that we get from this biodiversity for the next generation. So let me say that our biodiversity is actually our asset. It is our biggest production asset. And that calls for everyone to give good attention to it. Now, let me talk a bit more in more practical sense around things that we see every day. You know, up to 90% of endangered species are endangered or lost because of abuse of biodiversity. Up to 90%, you know, they are endangered because we abuse this biodiversity. That over 40% of the earth's surface has been converted to farmland or rangeland, and this destroys biodiversity and the natural processes. Now, someone is going to ask me, so what are you trying to say? Aren't we going to farm again? Yes, we are going to continue to farm, but we must get into, we must manage these resources in such a way that it will be sustainable. You know, and I tell you, the most productive ecosystem, they are the prime victim of conversion into farms, a forest land, a wetland, we convert them into farms and we do all those things. Then there is a heightened increase in deforestation in tropical land. Now, this is important because when we do that, it contributes significantly to the climate change. And the effect of climate change is getting across to us, you know. The other data I want to show refers to water bodies. Yes, water bodies, I mean, is one of the largest source of biodiversity. In fact, the different plants community, the different animal fishes, and all other life in the sea. So it's really very rich. It's the next to the soil. Soil is so rich in microorganisms, but the water is still the next. And the activities of fishing or harvesting fish from the sea, it's actually a major culprit in the destruction of the deep water ecosystem. Now, the bad part of this is that it takes a very long time to recover. Then someone is going to ask, aren't we going to eat fishes again? Yes, we must continue to harvest the fishes, but we must use very good systems to harvest the fishes. Up to 25% of the fish catch in the sea are discarded, and this statistics really amazes me. And so the UN data indicated that 70% of the marine species are overexploited now, and there is a huge problem around this. You know, most of the fishes in the shallow water that have been taken, so the trawler now goes into the deep water to harvest fish that we do. I know that there are a few international regulations on the size of the nets to use the quantity to take per time, so that it will give opportunity for the fishes also to reproduce, and we are able to use them consistently. I'd like to talk about the fresh waters, that's the rivers that we see around us, you know, and these rivers also, it's a dense source of biodiversity. But you see that we alter the natural system, which we could do, but must do in such a way that it will be sustained. We do this power generation, we come up with irrigation scheme, you know, and this is nice as it may be. If we do them, if we construct or we maximize the benefit of fresh water, and we construct with biodiversity conservation at the back of our mind. Then recently, there is increase in aquaculture practices. I mean, fish cages on river bodies, and you know, we also go into ponds, I mean, rivers, streams that pass by us, we convert and get water from them. Well, as good as this is, you know, the return of the water back into the water system creates a lot of pollution from unused fields. And this is actually gradually attaining a threshold where intensive attention is required. Now, the third one is around birds and microorganisms. 30% of the birds and up to 15% and 30% of the birds population faces extinction. I mean, many of them, they've been harvested and so on and so forth. This makes me to think strongly about the story of the local avian species, the chicken, the duck, the guinea fowl in different parts of Africa and in Nigeria. I mean, these local breeds against the exotic and the improved breeds that will bring in the broiler and species. I know that Federal University of Agriculture in Abeokuta work to do a cross between the local and some improved. And I hear names like the Nohila and the related things in Nigeria. It is important for us to find a way to conserve the genetic potential in this local chicken. I mean, possibly as source of genetic material for different improvement. The same way the traditional seed system of most indigenous food commodities are facing extinction due to food. FARA has been working with the Global Forum of Agricultural Research and the State Department of the United States to work on the VAX and on forgotten foods in Africa. One of the biggest trouble is that many of these so-called traditional foods, I mean, they are actually facing extinction. Many of them, we cannot find their seeds. Many of them, they do not have the type of varieties that we want in them. And this is really bringing us to a point where we need to sit down and find opportunity to do maybe germplasm conservation at the country level. Then there is this systemic killing of organisms, the use of pesticides, insecticides, rodenticides, and all those stuff. And I also think that oxygen technology is contributing to this biodiversity erosion. And I am of the opinion that all of these things, we need to put them on the table and come up with specific actions that regulate the abuse of biodiversity. I spent a good time to put this together and to show the human activities that trigger biodiversity losses. I mean, principal among them that you find that is evidence already in literature is habitat loss. I mean, opening up of new land. Why we will open new land for new things? I am of the opinion that, I mean, opening of land should be based on land capability studies. And it should not be that I have secured certificate of occupancy from government, then I can destroy biodiversity. Let me be a bit emotional on this particular point because we are working on it at the moment with the African Union Commission. You know, to say that having certificate of occupancy, I mean, government certification to use a particular land is not a license to destroy the land. I mean, you spend even maximum of 100 years, you destroy the land, then you're gone. Then you leave nothing for sustaining the next generation. I think we need to come up with very practical policies and implement those policies on land use so that we reduce habitat loss for many of these biodiverse resources. There is the issue of overexploitation, and I think I've talked so much about that. Down here, there is the exotic species that we bring in. And what is interesting in the exotic species, as beneficial as some of them could be in producing food, fiber, or other substances that we may need with commercial implication, they have the tendencies to replace the original species that we find in our system. And I know that we are often very quick to say, oh, that the imported ones are far better than the local, until the imported one faces issues of diseases. And when they face the issue of diseases, possibly they cannot survive heat. I'm happy that my colleague, Professor Egesi, is on this platform. Possibly if he goes in the direction of his talk, he can talk about genetic diversity in the cassava area. Why we have to go into into wild relatives to isolate genes that will help us overcome cassava mosaic virus. I mean, those are the things that were done in IITA, and that is part of my previous life. I wasn't a breeder then, but I worked closely with the cassava breeder. The issue of invasive species also, those that are from Nigeria and the Yoruba descent, you remember Promolina odorata, Akintola taku, that's what the Yoruba people call it. It's an invasive species. It was brought in, and then now, I mean, when you move into the derived from other part of Nigeria, it has become a very strong weed that overtook and led to vegetation succession so much in that part of the country. There is a pest and predator type of relationship also. Let me begin to bring it towards a close and still talk a bit of the mutual reinforcement of soil degradation and climate change. You agree with me that climate change is hitting us at the face in a very tough manner. And you know, I'm not so happy about that, but you know, it calls for Africa to learn its lessons. More than 20 years ago, when the discussion around climate change came up, I was part of the team that had access to data, 500 years climate data. Of course, the data showed us that every 50 years, there is a dynamic change when we subjected it to analysis. There's a dynamic change in climate and it stabilizes and often it stays. Okay? And then, you know, those analysis makes us not to take any action. But today, climate change is hitting us at the face. Where there is no rain before, they are now having flood. And in areas where you call dry land, there is flood that is so devastating. It's unfortunate that 2-3 years ago, there is a lot of drought in Kenya. But I mean, nearly a month ago, in the same place where there used to be drought and they don't have a lot of water, they have drought, they have flood that take over killed over 100 individuals in Kenya. I mean, this is calling us also to take action and to work. And looking at this illustration, you see that soil biodiversity played a lot of role in degradation. And soil is the source and sink of carbon. So when you abuse soil biodiversity, then the resource for carbon sink goes off. What you have is more carbon emission, and that leads to climate change. And that's what I'm trying to show here. It leads to climate change. The multiplier effect of climate change down is heat stress and rainfall variability. And that also begin to affect biodiversity pool. Now, when you look at the economic implication on the right side of this slide, the issue of food production, food security, nutritional security, economic growth begin to come. And all these things, they don't suddenly come. They have their root in the way we use our production assets, and most especially biodiversity as biodiversity as a resource to manage carefully so that the nature process will sustain and will be able to yield to us. Then it comes down to the lower side, the issue of natural resource integrity, the incidence of new pests and diseases, disruption in ecosystem function, and the related things. I mean, the bottom line here is this mutual reinforcement. And you know what? The common man did not have this knowledge. And the common man is the biggest user and abuser, if that is in good English, is the common user and the one that abused biodiversity. Now he's doing that because he just wants money. He just wants to do it the easy way and to get, you know, in Nigerian parlance, we call it guru to the answer. So he got it and he walks away. And this is part of the reason why the academic community, the intellectual community, the technocrats, and the civil and members of the civil society that I enlightened must go out to form a social movement. I'll come to that as I close. So there are dangers of biodiversity loss. One, the climate change. And I'm not going to repeat what I've said, but also weak and very vulnerable biosphere. And that is really, really very important. Climate change is there, but when we have a biosphere that is not resilient enough, life on Earth is threatened. It's threatened. And we need to give attention to this. Then the laws of genetic pool. I've made an allusion to that when I used the illustration of sourcing a gene from white relatives of cassava. I think this is done for almost okra when they are hit by diseases and certain pests, and you need the genetic resources to address the problem. Now, the question is, why do we need rapid action on biodiversity conservation? The reason that we often don't look at is because to the majority in our society, they are not seeing the root of the problem. They're not seeing the root of the problem, so they treat the symptoms. In fact, most of the policies also address the symptoms, not the root. And if you're fast with the social science component of this type of issue, there is this tree analysis for identification and provision of solution. You do tree analysis, and when you look at it, the symptoms, the leaves that is drying up, is not because anything is happening to the leaves, but the leaves, the problem is in the root of the tree. We call it problem tree analysis. So when you do problem tree analysis, you'll be able to come up with the type of things I'm trying to talk about. So for the civil society, loss of biodiversity is not a high priority issue because they're not the civil society, even intellectuals that are advising the policy makers, they are not using problem tree analysis. And the issue, what we come up with, what the politicians want to address is food and nutrition insecurity. Yeah, how do we get more food? Then let's put more fertilizer. Oh, let's get people to open more land. And as they open more land, they destroy the ecosystem and more like that. The issue of youth employment, how do we get them new jobs? Political instability, self-inflicted terrorism, poverty, and poor economic situation. These are the things that hits the civil society on the face, and these are the things that politicians give attention to. And that is the reason why we must help the civil society to see the role of biodiversity and the threshold of its contribution to the type of solution we want. The second issue is around soil and land degradation. And I tell you, I have the statistics of this is at the tipping point. And I'm very happy. I'm very happy that the continent is taking a proactive action to address soil degradation and come up with soil management on the continent. 2 weeks ago, we were all in Nairobi with the presidential summit that passed or accepted the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan for implementation and the Soil Initiative for Africa as a long-term framework to manage African soil. But let me say this to you, that the farmlands that we are cultivating today, I mean, we are cultivating them because we decimate biodiversity, but there are ways to do it better. 65% of the farmlands that we have now is at different stages of land degradation. And that calls for enacting the social movement to address this. There are several vulnerable species of plants and animals have gone into a system, already gone. I mean, those that are gone, I doubt if there is any way to bring them back. They are dead and buried. Then we need to conserve what we have now and ensure that it provides service to the commodity. So I want to recommend a few prospective action and policy change. And this is really very important. We must come up with appropriate policies You know, and I tell you, there is no government, things cannot be done without putting policy in place. Nigeria have two documents like that we need to look at again and then maybe upgrade them so that they can respond to current issues. Then we need to find a way to establish incentive for practices that conserve biodiversity and deterrent for wrongdoing, not only in Nigeria, but across the continent. I mean, finding incentive for those who practice it and deterrent for those who don't is actually a big one. The second one is advocacy. And I want to start from point 4. It will be vital for us to identify champions of biodiversity conservation. And I tell you, the center, the TETFUND Center at the University of Lagos can take this as some of the issues to address. Find a champion that can speak about this so that we bring this to the knowledge of people. The issue of smart communication on the need for biodiversity conservation, even at the home level, is becoming very important. And I think we have the right tool, we have the knowledge to do this. Social media has become. What of if we have a community of practice, or we form a social movement that ensures that on daily basis, there are posts that helps at conscientizing the society. You know, what we truly need is to get everyone in the society to appreciate the need for biodiversity conservation. And if we can do that, and how do you do that? Inundate the society with information about it. Before you know it, you begin to see change. And that talks about social campaign and the need to conserve the society. The issue of research and technology is also very important. Now, I don't know if you are able to see this slide. I just want to tickle our mind and our intelligence around prospective action. You've been seeing push across the globe that Africa, well, maybe at global level, need to change this production system. We need to go the nature-based approaches. We need to use agroecology, maybe organic agriculture, regenerative agriculture, and there are 17 of such models, and the pressure is so much on Africa. Then I want to say, in the light of biodiversity conservation, what should be African position on the push for nature-based approaches? I don't have a magic one, but I want to suggest these 3 things. Africa needs to think about the sustainability of its environment, but sustainability of its food, and, you know, look into its area before Africa flow into any model that is exotic. We have fragile environment. You need to agree with me on that. We have fragile resource base. We have vulnerable socioeconomic conditions. We have low level of technologies and the capacity to even meet up with the pace of technology changes we don't have in Africa. Don't you think we should have an Africa-owned and African-led development trajectory? And the third one is Africa-owned food sovereignty. It's important, but it will be driven by knowledge. Now, why should we have a social movement and how? Now, when you look at the left side, to me, of this slide, a social movement in our balance, the balance of biodiversity conservation, is not carrying placards and protesting. No, it is not a political group. It is not an agitation group. It is not a protest cycle, and it is not a rioting gathering, but a grouping of people that want to create social awareness, that want to persuade action, that want to lobby policy, and want to communicate actively. If you agree with me that that is what our intellectual, redemptive social movement should be, then the way to do it is to bring it around a cause with connections to people's deepest passion about the right and the wrong. So this will mean that it will make people think about what matters and about creating a better world for today and posterity. Our social movement need to concentrate on action that will push the movement forward, concentrate on targets with specific dates, enlist partners who share passion and ensure that the movement is not about any individual. Then the cause has to be so important that individual and group identity can be put away. Then we follow the cause. So it's not going to be, oh, it is University of Lagos that hold it. No, it is jointly with the social movement, and we engage as many people. And our social movement must use intellectual capacity, data to convince. In conclusion, please, abuse of biodiversity is an ethical problem. Yes, it is ethical problem, but it is rooted in ignorance of the reinforcing effects of action and inaction on ecological balance and life on Earth. Now I want to believe that you agree with me with that. Yeah, so why the use of natural resources is mandatory to support our life on Earth? Over exploitation is destructive to the entire system. And we need to accentuate over exploitation more carefully and get the policy system or technical action to address it. Now, as it relates to exotic species, it should be done cautiously, and we need to give cognizance to adaptation to the new environment, destruction of natural processes, displacement of other species, and other trade-offs. I think on this, I saw that the different countries in Africa, including Nigeria, we are very careful to bring in biotechnology products into the country. And if we will use the same method for introduction of every exotic species, I think we'll be able to conserve to a good extent. So opening up space for agricultural purposes need to be structured. It should follow land capability assessment and mapping of the country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I still have 3 more. Okay, the change requires the development of the social movement. It should be driven by knowledge. I've talked about that. And the purpose of the movement is to conscientize the civil society so that you don't need to ask anybody to change. They really know the reasons why they change. So the need for policy effort is also necessary. Thank you very much. I stop there. Over to you, moderator.
Indeed, I think we will say Asante Sana to you as well. Thank you so much. We're grateful. And for me, it's ringing in my head that the abuse of biodiversity is an ethical problem. Strange. I never thought of it like that. And so if there is nothing to even go away with, one then begins to think about the ethics of abusing our biodiversity. Thank you very much, Prof. And let me just be like an Oliver Twist and ask extra. Will you oblige us with your PowerPoints?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a public good. It's a public good.
Good.
So I'll just send it to Professor
Bukomi.
And
Okay.
feel free to share it, widely put it in social media. I mean, let it go viral. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Prof. And on that note, I must appreciate our Director of Training, Professor Ogukomi, who had actually put all of this together. Prof, well done and thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you very much, Prof. People are already getting their questions down. At the time for question and answer, we ask that you please kindly join us so that you can answer your own part of the questions. Thank you. Please, people, either you can put your questions in the Q&A or you can wait until the Q&A session, which comes after the panel discussions. Thank you very much once again, Prof. Now we quickly go to the session 2, which is the panel discussion. And the first discussant is Professor Chigozie Egesi. Is the CEO and Executive Director, National Root Crops Research Institute in Abia State, and Director, Next Gen Cassava Breeding Project. Is also an adjunct professor, plant breeding and genetics, Cornell University. Good morning, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. I'll ask Dr. Subarak to do a quick read of your citation now.
Professor Chiedozie Egesi is the Executive Director, CEO of Nigeria's National Root Crop Research Institute in Umudiki. Until recently, he was the director of the Next Gen Cassava Breeding Project during his stint as a senior scientist at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA. The Next Gen Cassava was a 10-year grant. The Next Gen Cassava was a 10-year grant co-funded by the Gates Foundation and FCDO, focused on accelerating the rate of genetic gains in cassava. Professor Chiedozie is an adjunct faculty in Cornell University's School of Integrative Plant Sciences. He had earlier served as a yam breeder and a cassava breeder at the National Root Crop Research Institute and as a cassava breeder at the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, in Colombia. Professor Egesi is the 2021 recipient of Nigeria's Achiever in Agriculture Award. He is currently the president of Nigerian Plant Breeders Association. As a dynamic manager, he has a mission to help support African countries through improving its most important crops. He obtained his PhD also from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. Welcome on board, Professor Chiedozie Egesi.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Are we sit together?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Well,
Yes,
maybe I'll just call up the second panelist, Prof. Just give me a minute, please. I'll call the second panel discussant, Dr. Temitope Shugbamu. She's the team lead, Environmental Evidence Synthesis and Knowledge Translation. Dr. Shugbamu, are you with us? Good. So that, the discussion, it's a panel of discussants, and so you have the next 20 minutes, Prof. and Dr. Shugbamu. Thank you very much. And like I said, please, people, get ready your questions so that you can ask the questions during the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. And thank you, Dr. Shugbamu.
Right. Thank you, Professor Deronke, and thank you, my colleague, Professor. But I want to really thank Professor Wole Fatumbi for an excellent presentation. He has made the job very easy for us. I don't even know what else to say that he hasn't said, and even more. But we are here, and we're excited to be part of this International Day of Biodiversity. I am particularly glad to be part of the plan, and I hope and believe that everyone here is part of the plan. He already mentioned the challenge and the solutions. Hello? Did somebody say something?
No, go ahead. We can hear you, Chiedozie.
Okay. So Professor Fatumbi made a lot of, he was very exhaustive, and I felt that was very satisfactory and even more than enough for today. But just to say that it's a global challenge, and we need to localize it. And he tried to localize it to our situations. My citation that was mentioned, I am really an avid user of plant biodiversity, especially when it comes to root and tuber crops. The whole world is facing an unprecedented confluence of threats from many interconnected factors, and you saw that in the keynote presentation. One of the big issues is habitat loss, and the part of the causes will be population increase. Nigeria's population is rising at the rate of nearly 3% annually, And coupled with that is the conflicts and migration and rural poverty. I mean, somebody needs to be mentally balanced and having all the social needs met, especially food, to be able to think about what role would I play in biodiversity conservation. And if those are missing, then it's become secondary, while it should be priority, like and ethical, like the keynote speaker mentioned. Then we know the consequences of climate change, whether we agree to it or not, is happening. You see where there's been no rain. There used to be limited amount of rain, and it begins to get reversed, and vice versa in places where you used to have plenty of rain for. That has its own consequences in the the biota, or the kind of biodiversity constitution. And then environmental forces, like Professor Fatumbi mentioned, pests and diseases and predators, and the competition for natural resources. You all see, if you're driving from Lagos to Ibadan, you see that you used to see large stretches of green. Now it is large stretches of warehouses, and industrialization is happening. We are glad, creating new jobs, but also damaging something that's very vital to all of us. Have you tried to go around the J4 area between the Benin-Shagamu Expressway? You see a lot of logging, kind of activities that are not sustainable. The way logging is happening, we're not replacing enough. And those are issues when you talk about challenges. Then policy and governance. Thanks to the University of Lagos and the TETFUND Center for Management of Biodiversity. I hope I got that name right. Think about the whole nation. This is the only place I think something like this is happening on a day such as this. And Nigeria is a signatory to the Biodiversity Convention on Biological Diversity, the Cartagena Protocol. So Nigeria is a signatory. What is the Federal Ministry of Environment doing on a day like this to educate the citizens of the nation? What's the Federal Ministry of Agriculture doing? What's the Federal Ministry of Science and Tech that is housing the mandated organization, which is NABDA or NAGRAB/NABDA? They have the national mandate for this, or for plant genetic resources. What are they, and even animal, what are they doing around this on a day as this? So we need to wake up. We need to wake up as a nation, either at the government level or at the citizen level. And policy and governance issues are becoming more politicized. People are talking about things that are not going to be sustainable, or just talking about immediate need. What do I need to do today to survive, rather than how do I preserve the environment? How do we preserve? So there's loss in biodiversity in the field, and this is causing genetic erosion, and it has its consequences. Let me focus on agriculture, which is my area. The genetic erosion is happening. How many varieties? And you saw 309 species are threatened in Nigeria. How big is Nigeria? We all think Nigeria is so big. Nigeria is big, is a relative term, but 309, if we begin to look at what rate is genetic erosion happening in Nigeria, I don't even think anybody's working on that. At what rate is a particular species being eroded per time? Those are things we need to do. Reduction in the number of crop species being grown. But this is a willful one that we all depend on, maybe not more than 5 crops, 6 crops. So we either eat eba or amala or inyo or pounded yam or rice or beans. And that is basically all that we eat every day. We eat it in different forms. But that's also a precursor to genetic erosion and loss in genetic diversity. So low agrobiodiversity will make agriculture more vulnerable, like we all know, to pests, diseases, and even to climate change. And we lose agricultural biodiversity when we lose it, we lose our options to make our diets healthier. So it has consequences around our nutrition, around our health, around our well-being, around even the gray matter development of our young ones. And the food system becomes an unsustainable thing if we continue to go there. I think the keynote speaker was making reference to using wild species to improve cultivated crops, and he mentioned something like cassava. There are a lot more that is even in pharmaceuticals. The tomatin is a sweetener, and its origin is from Nigeria, mostly West Africa, maybe broadly, but we have lost it. We don't even have it. But people have already been able to synthesize it and are using it elsewhere in the world, and they are selling it to others as sweetener and making millions of dollars. So we are losing resources as we continue to lose this biodiversity. And these are challenges. I don't want to repeat all the things that the keynote speaker mentioned around sustainability and all those things, but we have an opportunity. I mean, all hope is not lost. Or somebody saying something? All hope is not lost. So we have institutions, we have a civil society, we have NGOs that we can leverage on. The FAO is one particular one that is very active, I think, in having an international treaty on plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. On the basis that no region or no country, I mean, we're complaining about Nigeria or Africa, but all over the world is a similar pattern, similar scenario. And we know that we are all interdependent if we want to go. So there are many issues related to this, and the FAO is doing that. So there's an international treaty, ITP, GRA. But Nigeria is a member of is part of the contracting parties. And like I mentioned, NAGRAB is the National Center for Genetic Resources and Biotechnology. It used to be an independent organization, but now is under the National Biotechnology Research and Development Agency, Abuja. But they are based in More Plantation, Ibadan. So every year there is, in fact, there's an active conversation that is going on with all the research institutes that have genetic resources conservation facilities on how to develop this. But I sometimes I think is more of talk than action. Why? Because these organizations or these gene banks, as it were, let me use the word gene banks, are not funded and not properly funded by government. And when they are funded, they're not even given resources at the right time for the right intervention. And being a chief executive of one, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but it's a big challenge for all of us to run a gene bank. So when a research institute is having a difficult time running a gene bank, then many things will be compromised. So we need to begin to look what can be done, look at what can be done in the areas of, should we be focusing more now on community seed banks? And what does that mean? How does the person in my village understand that small forest, there's a small forest in my village where people don't go to fetch firewood. It's just like a conservation site. That could be a community seed bank. It can also be a place that you store seed at the community level, and you say, this area, we will keep seeds here. And it can be sold, it can be, used in a sustainable manner. And you can also have forest reserve areas, like I was saying, forest reserve areas that can be, kept aside from all kinds of logging and all kinds of abuse, like the keynote speaker will say. I know that the government is trying, but it can do better. But also, we need we need companies, we need the industry or some, we need resources from unconventional places that will be able to, fund simple gene banks, simple, fill gene bank or even use technology like solar power or any other means to make sure that we're able to conserve some of the seeds that we're not using today. We know about the global seed vault in Norway, Svalbard, where they try to store everything, but they cannot store everything in the whole world. So what is the country doing? We have is a cold place in Norway, but we have the Plateau State area where we can go and also store seeds in certain parts of the Mambila Plateau. Is Nigeria thinking about something like that? Because the environment helps the whole system. Even if you are going to have a cold store is better, works better in a colder environment than it will do in a hotter environment. So these are things we need to do. What are the universities doing? Is the vice chancellor thinking about setting up something like that? I like the TETFUND. They have something like that, but are they funding something like a seed bank or a gene bank in Unilag? And would they be able to do that in the 6 geopolitical areas in Nigeria, something like that, selecting, careful selection of the places to build something like that and be able to fund it, since that fund is an ongoing, they would not easily run out of funds like the ministry will run out, and make it a something, a systematic thing, and something that we do every time. Every year, fund every year, and put the right people there, and begin to look at how to make this gene banks work for Nigerians and work for Africa, for the smallholders. I'm going to stop here or pause here for my colleague to make her own contribution so that I don't keep talking. I can come back.
Thank you, Professor Egese. I hope I got that pronunciation correct, and I hope we can all hear me. Thank you to TCEBCEM for the invitation. I'm actually part of the stakeholders. So I lead the Environmental Evidence Synthesis and Knowledge Translation Research Cluster at TCEBCEM. Before us today, we're to talk about the challenges and solutions to biodiversity loss. And one of the first things to do is for each of us to already be part of the plan. And that's why I intentionally changed my background. I am part of the plan, but is like we've heard from the last 2 speakers, it's not about, the truth is that we have quite a number of policies in place, especially in Nigeria. I'm an environmental toxicologist by training. I work with quite a number of environmental policymakers. And so by my training, I basically investigate what are the pollution issues that we have within our environment and how is it affecting living organisms. Rightly so, Prof has talked about crops, so I will talk more about animals because I am first a zoologist before I became an environmental toxicologist. And we can see from the previous presentations that the major challenge we have is put before us by our quest for socioeconomic development. We hear now about climate change, we hear about plastic pollution, we hear about biodiversity loss. All of these are interlinked to man's quest for industrialization. And this, while we industrialize and we develop, unfortunately, there are also adverse impacts of these developments on the environment. In tandem with a growing population, at the moment, we are nearing 8 billion in the world. And we know that even in Nigeria alone, we're about almost 224 million people. And within increasingly smaller land space. And then we are even encroaching into the aquatic ecosystems. And so we're basically leaving less space for the organisms that are therein. And not just that we are taking up the space originally set aside for them, but the activities that we're doing across these ecosystems are impacting them. For example, Nigeria is actually one of the highest producers of plastic waste in Africa and indeed across the world, especially Lagos being a metropolitan city And over 85% of this waste is actually mismanaged. And that's where the problem is, because this waste gets into the environment through floods, gets into the environment through improperly managed landfills, gets into the environment through direct discharge by the various publics that we have. And these are taken up by animals in this system. Several studies have actually shown effects clogging of plastic waste in animals. Some of these wastes have been found also in our food, actually. So we're not only causing biodiversity loss and decline through our activities, but we are also indirectly affecting ourselves. Because again, when we have decline in biodiversity, it means that we have less natural resources to extract. It means that the ecosystem services provided by these natural resources are also declining in terms of provisioning, in terms of recreation, in terms of even the water, abstracting water for drinking. When we pollute it, we have such problems. But I don't like to talk a lot about the challenges alone. And the previous speaker have, spoken a lot about it. And I also like to talk about the solutions. And that's why I'm not just an environmental toxicologist, I'm also a pollution management specialist. So what do we do from here? We are where we are. Where do we go from here? We are all talking about sustainability. We're all talking about a situation where we want to have resources available for us to use now, but also be available for the future generations to use. And how we do that in our studies beyond the science is also to inculcate sustainable lifestyles and way of doing things. One of the challenges that we have is that we have a lot of siloed thinking, especially in this part of the world. And we scientists need to begin to move out of our space, need to know that beyond you investigating the problem and publishing it in journals, we need to take that information to the publics that are actually doing the impacts, to the industries. We need to put this information before the policymakers who actually have the power to make the decisions, to make the policies that can make a difference potentially. We need to advocate. Professor Gese mentioned that, and advocate through various means. One of this way of advocating is this platform that TCEBCEM is doing, which is fantastic. But beyond just doing it as a webinar, they are also streaming this live on YouTube. So it means that it's not only stakeholders that are within Nigeria that have access to the information that we're dishing out here. Anywhere, any person all over the world can actually listen and hear this live and even record it. So the advocacy is consistent and it's ongoing. The truth is that, and we've actually studied this, quite a number of stakeholders, especially in the developing world, are not knowledgeable of the risk of the activities that they're doing on the environment. They don't understand the extent of the adverse impact. I mean, the fisher folks know that they're not getting as much fish catch when they go there. But it seems like there's a gap or a lacuna between understanding that when you go fishing and you drop your pure water nylon or your bottled water into the environment, you are actually contributing to the decline that is affecting your way of life or your livelihood. It seems like that lacuna is there. And that's because we have not yet adequately brought the science to these different publics and society. Policymakers are also there, but policymakers also need to engage with the science, engage with the scientists to actually know the evidence that is available. So I actually push evidence. And so when I'm talking about evidence, I'm talking about the knowledge. I like to give examples. So in 2020, I conceptualized the Evidence Used in Environmental Policymaking in Nigeria project. It facilitates interactions between scientists or researchers, we call it evidence producers, and evidence users, so the policymakers, but as well as the brokers, the intermediaries. And we actually had as one of our activities, someone from Lagos State Ministry of Environment do a secondment at the University of Lagos, the Research and Innovation Office at the time. And you wouldn't believe it, just within 6 weeks, and this was during COVID in 2020, she had a lot of robust interactions with different research groups in the university, so much so that I am aware, and I've even lost count of the number of development projects, research projects that they have done in collaboration since just that 6 weeks of secondment. The same, we had the scientists go to the ministry. And from the Nigerian Institute of Oceanography and Marine Research. So she was seconded to Lagos State Ministry of Environment, and she was working right in the office of the permanent secretary. So I'm saying initiatives like this are part of the solutions that we need to begin to plan. The question is, who is going to take the bull by the horn? What machineries or infrastructure systems are in place to facilitate such engagements? Because beyond halting our activities or biodiversity loss activities, it's very, very important that we continue the engagements so that the science that we're putting forward is actually feeding into policies, into action plan, and also getting feedback, so that we are not basically, going round in circles, speaking to the issue, but not achieving much or achieving anything. And that's why we will see that as part of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 17 talks about partnerships for the goals. Is because they realize that we can have all the goals there. We can have and talk about sustainability of life below water. We can talk about sustainability of life on land. We can talk about so many things, but without strategic partnerships, so it's not just partnerships, strategic partnerships, we really will not achieve the sustainability that we want to see of our environment. And it's very fantastic, as you will see here, we have these partnerships envisaged in this meeting. We have FARA partnering with Unilag, we have TCEBCEM partnering with the universities, we have policy-making institutions partnering with research institutions. The question is, we want to see more of that, and we want to see the low-hanging fruits. And might I say, I am a scientist, so I know this. The low-hanging fruits that we're looking for, we're talking about, is not just scientific publications. The publics that we want to reach, with changing their attitudes and their behaviors, hardly read scientific publications. Even the public policy makers who make the decisions have no time to read our technical jargons in a 20-page paper. But if we brought that science, if we translated that scientific publication into 2 or 4 pages in a policy brief or an evidence brief, we'll likely, hopefully, able to get the ears of the decision makers who, whether we like it or not, especially for we researchers, are as busy, if not even more busy, because they have to deal with the different, requests of the publics that they are actually called to serve. Another challenge with developing countries is that we are still at the place where we are developing. So it's a question of, do we stop or halt our development in order for us not to further degrade the environment? The truth, as we all know, is no, we have to continue to develop. So how do we ensure that we are developing, but not at the expense of the environment that is actually supposed to sustain us? Because it goes both ways. And so it's also about understanding what alternative ways. Now we're talking about energy. We're talking about clean energy. We're talking about renewable energy. And we have policies in place now that are, going towards net zero emissions, stopping fossil fuel use, disincentivizing the use of fossil fuels or unsustainable livelihoods. But we also know this is also adversely impacting on a lot of the population. And so in order to ensure that there is synergy and to ensure that this is something that can be sustainable, we need to provide diverse options for these alternative or net zero emissions or cleaner energy options, so that it becomes cheap enough for people to be able to gradually move towards unsustainable or non-renewable energy sources, for example, to sustainable and cleaner energy sources. I have just 1 minute. I just want to say on this very last note that we need to put our mouth into the actions that we want to see. And that's why we can see behind me, I am saying here, I am part of the plan. My question and challenge to us this morning is, are you part of the plan to halt the degradation of the environment and biodiversity loss? Please join us and be part of the plan and let your actions count. Thank you very much.
I think we can give all our discussants, our keynote speaker, a virtual clap. I want to say a big thank you to them all. Thank you so much. And we've been asked a very, very important question. The theme this year is be part of the plan. Are you part of the plan? Now, there are some questions and answers that is already on the Q&A, and responses are ongoing there, but I don't know if we have one or two people who, out of the participants, who want to unmute and ask questions so that we can then respond. Can we see you put your hands up so that we can just call one or two? But trust me, if you go to the Q&A and you put your questions there, someone is already answering your questions. I want to say thank you to the participants. So if you have any question at this time, can you just let's see your hand so that you can ask and you can get a response. Professor Fatumbi is here. Dr. Shubamu is there. Professor Gessi is there. They're ready to speak to your questions. I can see one question there. All right, Professor Fatumbi, please, you want to answer the question live. The floor is yours, sir. There is a question from Mechi Patricia, yeah? Prof, you say you want to answer the question live, so we're ready for you, sir.
Yes, I guess that technology tricked me to pick that option. So let me.
We thank God technology tricked you.
I actually wanted to type my response to that. And I'm very happy that we are beginning to see that what is going on in the Netherlands, and maybe it is called the community of practice that is built up, and they already have 20 individuals in Nigeria that are responding to that. Let me just say that the way community of practice functions, it functions like a youth group. A youth group is only functional when they run on activities. And that is the way a community of practice will be functional. I also want to suggest to the lady or the fellow who raised the question that a multi-stakeholder community of practice is actually better than the community of practice that is only taxed to intellectual. We should never forget that the issue we have at hand, I mean, it's multidimensional. It's having the technical component, it's having the policy, it's having the business component. Same way, it needs to engage the civil society. So you need to find a way to bring up all these stakeholders into the movement. I wouldn't know what the center will want as it relates to bringing experts that are on this platform into your community of practice. You can liaise with the organizers of the centers if they want us to be there. And we'll be there to contribute our quota. What we want at the end of the day is to conscientize the society. Let everyone have an understanding of the issues at stake so that it will trigger a change of minds in the way we handle biodiversity and we ensure a stable and sane society. Let me stop there. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Prof. We appreciate your response. I would indulge us to please. All right, Professor Ruth Adelagun, please ask your question, and it's a pleasure to have you. Prof, we are listening. Could you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's so glad to be part of this. I've learned so much today. I just in furtherance to what Prof just said, I've been part of so many webinars, so many society, we come together, we discuss, we want to do this as scientists, as researchers. But the problem is, it's like we are not really talking to the right people. Just like he said, we need to come together as one. We should stop waiting for the policymakers to come to us. Like the right speaker said, this center, let's take a step. We know the problem, we know the solution. Let's put it on the table. Let us make them to listen to us. Because sorry, Yoruba said that an elderly person cannot be in a village and the head of a newborn baby will be twisted. Something like that. We know the problem. So I want to ask this center, this forum, this organizer, where do we go from here? After this webinar, after observing this World of Biodiversity Day, what do we do? Will there be a communique? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for the outage and for prompting us. Definitely, we will have a communique at the end of this webinar. And we intend, as the TETFUND Center of Excellence, to actually move beyond the rhetorics to begin to add action to what we have to say. Thank you very much. I don't know if the Director of Training has something to say. Professor, look at me, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I think let me appreciate all the speakers this morning. Really appreciate you and thank you so much. I think the essence is after this webinar, we need to sit down and have a communique and then put it into action. And that's why we say all about the part of this plan. So we want to see how we can engage these stakeholders. How do they get our noise? Because to them, we're just making noise. How do we make sure, how do we make them know that what we are saying, if you affect everybody, if you don't allow biodiversity to stay, life is at stake. So we let them know all this, that you are collecting money here and there. So why don't you let's spend this money on this? Because like Gary said something about gym bags. How many gym bags do we have? You go to France. I saw the highest collection of the gym bags there was from Nigeria. And they are claiming authority on that. So why are we losing all these resources to them? So these are things we sit down together as a center and then let the public know. And then we do a kind of awareness, advocacy. You go on television and then go to a radio station, let them know. So as this is what everybody should key into. You can sustain this life. You can't just take any organism with impunity and think because you have dominion over them. No, they have their own life to say, and then each one has its own peculiarity to solve the problem in the world. Some may be something that will solve the problem in future. So we are really going to key to this and then make sure that all what we are saying here, we have a communique, and then the director will, in fact, the vice is even here, we help us to publicize on the website. Thank you so much.
Okay, I hope I got that correct. You can just ask your question in 1 minute so that we go to the next sets of case studies before so that we begin to round up. Your hands are up to unmute and ask a question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd just like to appreciate the organizers very much, the center. I'd like to appreciate each and every one of the speakers, Professor Fatumbi, Professor and Professor Obu. I'm just wanting to say that the whole thing is a process. Biodiversity conservation is a process. I work at NIHOT in Ibadan. I'm currently the head of the Gene Bank. And as Professor Egesi rightly said, there are conversations ongoing to bring up a national policy on use and access to genetic resources, which is being spearheaded by NAGRA. And I believe that we have, even from Umudike, Professor Egesi's constituency, we have working on that policy document. It's why I want to appreciate this forum is because these are the kinds of efforts that, if sustained, will end up transmitting to something that the everyday person on the street can key into, so that it doesn't just remain what we as professionals or scientists speak about. So I commend this forum, and I think for me to even have gotten the invite to listen today shows how well the publicity is doing with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we're grateful. Thank you for at least telling us that we're reaching even beyond ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah.
We will be moving forward, and we will be moving forward. Please put your question in the question and answer box. I am sure either the discussants or our keynote speaker will be responding there. We will take case studies from Dr. Temitope Onomiye, who is a training officer in the center, and Professor Kainde Kemabonta, who is the team lead, Natural Resources Assessment and Management. They will be telling us about the cases and the success stories in biodiversity conservation. They each have 7 minutes, so that in the next 14 minutes, we're out of here. Dr. Onomiya, please, your 7 minutes starts now. Thank you. The success story in conservation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at TCEBCEM for celebrating the International Day for Biodiversity. Indeed, we are part of the plan, and I want to appreciate all our speakers so far for their contributions. I would be leaning on some of the things that they have shared and sharing our own success stories in those regards. Largely, I'll be talking about conservation in 3 dimensions. I'll be talking about contributions in genetic conservation. I would also be talking about our conservation effort through digitization of biodiversity data, as well as conservation of indigenous knowledge. So with respect to genetic conservation, at the center, we did look at issues of biodiversity loss, especially as it relates to tree species in Nigeria. And we also looked at the IUCN red listing status of this species vis-a-vis how they are being used in the environment and certain threats that we see that they are exposed to. We know that there have been several interventions across borders. However, our own intervention was to look at how to conserve these tree species in terms of their genetic resources. These are the team that were involved in this particular project, which is a TETFUND sponsored project titled DNA Banking and Barcoding of Endangered Tree Species in Nigeria. But by extension, we looked at threatened species generally, so those who are vulnerable, those who are near threatened, and those who are actually endangered or termed endangered by our assessments. We did use the DNA banking and DNA barcoding approach towards our conservative efforts, ensuring that DNA materials from these tree species are conserved for further analysis towards developing them to ensure that we have a sustainable conservation efforts in the environment. Indeed, we visited several geopolitical zones in the country. National parks were visited, forest reserves were also visited, and a number of tree species were collected based on assessments that were made in those environments and the kind of responses we got from people on either the population declining state of the species or the frequent usage of that species in that particular environment, putting it as an object of threat. Also, in certain environments, we find that even though conservation efforts are supposed to be going on in such habitats, we have a lot of disturbances, either from people who are rearing animals or people who are trying to develop industries in those environments. So the four most encountered species that we looked at in the different regions that are said to be threatened and in fact in danger of being endangered in the future are as presented on this slide. And through our efforts, we're able to make collections of a total of 260 threatened species, and these were DNA materials from these were conserved. We did a DNA barcoding using 4 different gene regions also to be able to better understand the composition of this species and what kind of efforts we can bring about in ensuring that they remain in existence within the environment. As part of our conservation effort also, we did a regional assessment of these species in the region in which they've been collected. And we did a national assessment as well of all the species in order for us to have a proper view of what their status is in terms of the IUCN ranking. Yes, the global status are known, but as a nation in Nigeria and then within a given geopolitical zone, what is the status of those species? This we're able to do, and of course, we made publications of it because we're scientists, but at the same time, we came up with a brief, which we have shared with them at the Ministry of Environment to be able to look into and see how they can develop policies around this towards the conservation of the species. Here, we also were able to do capacity building for people in order to know how to do the DNA banking activities and barcoding in case they also want to do it for other species within their given locality. We were able to train 10 undergraduates, 17 postgraduate students, 16 early career researchers, 6 senior researchers, and 5 technologists across 15 institutions nationwide in a 3-day workshop where we were able to take them through this. We appreciate the Tertiary Education Trust Fund for providing support to us in order to be able to actualize that project. The second mode of conservation that we were involved with is about digitizing biodiversity data. And essentially, we keyed into the GBIF mandate to be able to ensure free and open access data to biodiversity for conservationists as well as policymakers. GBIF is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. It is an open data research infrastructure funded by the world government, particularly the European Union. And the goal is to ensure that biodiversity data is made available for further planning and conservation practices. So for us in our team, we actually applied to GBIF and were able to get 2 grants from them. I'll be talking about one of them specifically this morning, which is an institutional level biodiversity data mobilization grant. And this grant focused on digitizing the Lagos University Herbarium. The Lagos University Herbarium is the second largest herbaria in Nigeria after the Forestry Research Institute Herbarium, which is the national herbarium in Nigeria. And we partnered with the GBIF node for Nigeria in order for us to be able to digitize all the specimens that are present within the Lagos University Herbarium. The project was titled Expanding the Visibility of the Lagos Herbarium through Digitization and Mobilization of Plant Specimen Data. And we had a mobilization team who documented all the specimen that we had in the herbarium, over 10,000 of them. All of these were digitized specimen, where images of specimen were also taken and deposited on the GBIF website. And then the data at the end of the day was mobilized and published through the GBIF portal. Here are some of the images of specimens that were digitized in the herbarium. And in total, what were we able to achieve with this project? We were able to mobilize 10,000 occurrence data, 4,000 checklist data, all of which are publicly available through the GBIF portal. We also had an electronic identification access key developed and in use in the herbarium, such that anyone who comes is able to have access to that information, even without necessarily physically being in the Lagos herbarium. We had capacity enhancement workshops, not just for scientists, but even for government agencies, as well as the Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources staff, on how they can use this digitized data to bring up policies and also inform some of their conservation efforts that they carry out from time to time as part of their mandates. We had a regional capacity workshop, which was a 3-day workshop on data use and data mobilization for policy. And this had several people from across Nigeria participating in that workshop. We have over 7,000 specimen data present with images on the GBIF platform. And we have a data paper published recently with FEDES on the Willy publishing platform on useful plants within the herbarium and how these can be used in ensuring proper classification of the medicinal usage of the plants for populace. This is a snapshot of the GBIF portal and some of the data sets that we were able to mobilize through this project. The data, like I said, is publicly available. It's being used by people already in carrying out their own researches and other conservation or policy-related work that they might have to do as it relates with the different group of plants that we were able to mobilize on that portal. This is a cross-section of an image of the capacity workshop which held on the project. And indeed, we appreciate GBIF and the European Union for the opportunity to do this, even as we have continued in ensuring that we have other conservative efforts and collaborations with people in other areas, being able to use this same technology and skills in order to conserve biodiversity data. Lastly, we worked on indigenous knowledge conservation, and this entirely just had to do with conserving knowledge about medicinal plants or medicinal plants really within various localities, or knowledge that people have on how certain animals or plant resource can be used. Typically, we find that people with this knowledge tend to just pass it along to their children by word of mouth. Documentation is not so much of a priority in the things that they do. And with time, this knowledge might be lost. So part of our goal is to ensure that we conserve such knowledge within our environment. And in this particular project, we worked on conserving ethno-veterinary knowledge about cattle disease management in Eastern Islands of Nigeria. And that particularly was done at the Gashaka Gomti area of Taraba State in Nigeria. As part of our efforts, we're able to document a number of plants. Images of some of them are shown on this slide. And 88 plant species were actually documented for use in treatment of cattle. The mode of use were recorded, the frequency of use were also recorded, and the mode or route of administration of such plants were recorded for future use. So this has been compiled as a publication and it's made easily available as well to people within that environment. It was an eye-opener for us to see how the Fulani herdsmen in particular are able to manage the various diseases that their animals are exposed to without necessarily having a trained veterinarian within that environment to be able to help them. So we're able to conserve this knowledge, and we hope that through this information that we have, we can actually have herbal products being developed from this for better management of such resources at the end of the day. On this note, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to us and just to see our own little way in which we have been part of the plan in ensuring that we have a sustainable environment and that our biodiversity are conserved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Onomiya. Professor Kemabonta, are you with us? Prof. Professor Kemabonta, are you there with us? She's the team lead Natural Resources Assessment and Management. Prof, are you with us?
Sorry.
I am not too sure Prof is with us. At this point, we have come to the end of this year's celebration of the International Day for Biodiversity 2024. And I want to thank everybody who's been here with us, the keynote speaker, the discussants, the Dr. Onomiya, the case study, our pioneer director, our vice chancellor, and all those who have joined us. We're indeed especially grateful to those who have joined us out of Nigeria. It's really a pleasure to know that we have gone beyond our own reach. The Research Management Office, we also want to thank them for the opportunity to use this space. I'm going to hand over to the Director, Training and Research of the Center, of the TETFUND Center of Excellence in Biodiversity, Conservation and Ecosystem Management, Professor Bukomi, for his vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Adenuga-Samuel, for the wonderful job you have done. I don't know how you combine your professorial work with this this auditory power. Thank you so much. The professor of biochemistry in biochemistry department, University of Lagos. Let me start with you. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, let me now go to my guests, especially the keynote speaker and one of the discussants, because the other one is my own person, Professor Wale Abiodun Fatumbi. So let me call the name. That's why I know that it's your person. Appreciating you. I want to say thank you so much, a big thank you to you, because I look at the genesis of catching you. I know you're a very, very busy person, international person. So it's like I have to beg you and say, oh, just for you, Bio, I will come and I will deliver. I will have come and will deliver. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And let me thank you for willingly giving us your presentation. So this will go a long way. We put it on our website for people to listen and digest. And again, my another friend of mine, Professor Chigozie Ngezi. We have been friends for over 20 years now. All of us met at TCEBCEM. And then you are my senior there. Like I said, let me say you made me. The two of you made me. So I met you in IT, and we still keep on going, keep moving with all this research idea. So thank you so much. Even when you are supposed to be somewhere today, that's okay. Bye, because of you, I will come. I say thank you so much for this. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Let me now go to our own person. That is our Vice Chancellor, Professor Folashade Bushola, the chief host for this program, while Professor Balabo is the host. So she's not here today. I'm just standing in for Professor Balabo. So I want to thank the Vice Chancellor for allowing us, for using the facilities of the university to showcase what we have. So this will tell you that no, that's what because really key in the area of biodiversity conservation. So I want to thank you so much. And my father and mentor, that is Professor Oluwatoyin Odupe, former Vice Chancellor, Vice of Lagos, and the pioneer director of this center. You made me. You put me on your shoulder as a child so that I can see the world, the whole world. Thank you so much and for even coming today to spare your time. When I'm so busy, probably you are from Abuja also, so it's still fit to come and give us your own welcome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Then I thank my director, Professor Bolabo. She's also somewhere else now, giving a lecture on biodiversity. So she's director of many parts. Is the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic and Research in the university and the director of TCEBCEM, Professor Bolabo. She's online now. Oh, great. Maybe she can just come in for 1 minute to say hi to people. Thank you so much for making it. Then let me now also thank the organizing team, the 3 strong men, our research fellows, the Zuban, the Walter, and Miriam. They made it all. I only direct them. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. All our members, TCEBCEM members, really appreciate you because without you, we cannot do it all because we have audience. That's why we are proud to say anything. If you don't have audience, nobody will be listening to you. So let me thank the audience outside Nigeria. Not people from Farah, people from Umudike, and from the other side of Nigeria, from Battery side of Nigeria. I thank you all for making this day for us. Then special thanks to the IT group. But this event was made possible because of them. They were here as early as 7 a.m. to make sure that we were able to do it live and direct, headed by Mr. Adewale Patai. Thank you so much. And then special thanks to the director too, Professor Moda, for allowing you to come and do the wonderful thing for us. So on these notes, I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to appreciate, but I want to give the baton to our director. She's online now. She can say 1 or 2 words for the closing remark. Professor Obama.
Yeah, good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, our invited speakers. It's already afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon. It's a pity I couldn't start this with you. I had another official engagement that I had to attend to, and but I'm back with you now, and I really appreciate. I've been reading snippets of the challenges that have been posed by our speakers, and I think that challenge as a center we will take on wholeheartedly, and within our space begin to see how we can, through our various researches, begin to have impact in the area of biodiversity conservation, especially also working seriously with the stakeholders to make sure that even as a nation, these policies are entrenched and we really walk the talk and not just talk about it all the time. So I thank you all for coming on board. I thank everyone who has organized, and I thank everyone who has found time to listen to us today. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Do have a lovely afternoon, even though it's a wet day. Thank you. We appreciate you. Have a great day.
If you want make a ginger, give me cocoa.